Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. So, hello everyone. Welcome to Wednesday night loving kindness meditation. My name is not Alex. My name is Travis. I'm subbing for Alex tonight. But I wore pajamas, so it'd be a more seamless transition. Through show of hands, is anyone here first time at the Dharma Temple? And then anyone first time at the Wednesday night loving kindness? Okay. So I won't do forgiveness meditation tonight. I was debating it. So we'll do loving kindness practice tonight. Usually I very rarely sub for Alex, so when I do, I like to do a different variation of loving kindness than what Alex normally does. So tonight we'll probably do an expanding kind of loving kindness. Rather than thinking of specific people, more thinking of this loving kindness expanding. What loving kindness is, or the word metta, has many translations. It can be loving kindness, unconditional friendliness, goodwill. And it's basically just this heartfelt wish that others find true happiness within. So even if we're generating loving kindness for someone that we don't like or someone who causes a lot of harm, that's actually a beneficial thing, because when someone is causing harm, it's because almost all the time, it's because they're suffering, because they feel a sense of lack inside themselves, because they don't have access to a true and internal happiness. So when we're wishing loving kindness for someone that maybe we don't like, we're not wishing that they be happy and then continue causing pain to others. We're wishing that they find true happiness within. We're wishing that they stop causing harm to others, because ultimately to find true happiness within, that stems from causes, and those causes tend to be non-affliction. I just wanted to throw that out there in case we were struggling at any point, if particular people come to mind or anything like that. So the way that this meditation works is there's multiple variations, but the kind of core of it is that we'll be working with phrases to elicit this sense of goodwill or this sense of loving kindness. And the phrases are important, but within my own opinion, within my own practice, what's most important is the kind of sensations that these phrases, or resonating with these phrases, has in the body. That sensation of loving kindness. Because that way, if we practice that consistently, then throughout the day, we don't necessarily, if we're having a moment of anger, we don't always necessarily have the clear-headedness to remember our set of phrases and recite the phrases internally. But if we can get in touch with what loving kindness feels like, the physical sensation of it, it's a lot easier to tap into that when we need to tap into it. And it tends to dissolve anger. So with that, we'll get started. In terms of posture, if you're sitting in a chair, it's helpful to have feet flat on the ground. If your feet don't reach the ground, one of the pillows, the zafus, they're in the back there, you can put one under your feet. It's helpful. Helpful to imagine a string kind of pulling the crown of the head up, straightening everything out. I like to bring the shoulders up and back and then allow them to drop into a really sturdy posture. The tongue can be pressed up against the roof of the mouth, gently against the back of the teeth. which prevents the buildup of saliva, which can become distracting. With that, we'll get started. Closing the eyes, if comfortable, and taking 3 deep breaths slowly. Settling into the natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing if there's any tension in the forehead or the area around the eyes. And seeing if we can consciously relax it all the way through the in-breath and all the way through the out. And gently guiding awareness down to the shoulders and repeating the same process here. Relaxing them all the way through the in-breath and all the way through the out. And finally, guiding awareness into the chest. The area around the heart. Notice if there's any tension. And see if you can imagine breathing through the tension, dissolving it away. All the way through the in-breath and all the way through the out. If you want, you can even imagine the breath coming in and out right there at the front of the chest. So you don't have to push or pull it from anywhere else in the body. Breathing in, the breath flows into the heart, soothing the heart. Breathing out, the breath expands out from the heart, opening the heart. The heart's going to be our home base for the remainder of the meditation. So we just want to take a few moments to make it a comfortable place to stay. And with the heart space, spacious and relaxed, we can begin this practice of loving kindness. And we can start with loving kindness for ourselves. You may find it helpful to hold an image of yourself as a child in your heart and extend these phrases to them. Noticing how it feels in the body, how it feels for the heart. You can begin internally working with these phrases. May I be happy. May I learn to be truly happy. Allowing the breath to fade into the background and to settle on sensation of the heart. On directing this loving kindness towards your childhood self. May I be free from stress and pain. be free from anger and irritation. Again, noticing how it feels in the chest. And resting into that sensation. If you want, you can even let a gentle smile rest on the face. It can help give rise to this sensation of loving kindness. May I look after myself with ease. If at any point you notice tension building up in the body in response to these phrases, to any of these phrases, soften that tension, the forehead, the shoulders, the chest, and then restate the phrase and soften into it. May I feel safe and protected. Noticing the sensation of loving kindness in the heart and wrapping your childhood self in this sensation, in this wish. You can release this childhood version of yourself and allow this sensation of loving kindness to expand. Expanding from the chest out to the arms and the legs and the head. May I be happy. May I be free from stress and pain. May I be free from anger and irritation. May I be free from oppression. May I be free from trouble. May I look after myself with ease. Sending this wish for loving kindness to every cell in the body, from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet. And then extending this wish out beyond the body. Extending this wish to all the beings in this room. If you want, you can imagine this loving kindness as this kind of ball of light filling the room. The embodiment of this wish for true happiness. May all the beings in this room find true happiness within. May they all be free from stress and pain. May they all be free from anger and irritation. May they be free from harm and causing harm. Noticing how it feels to extend these wishes out to others. And abiding in that sensation. And bit by bit, expanding this sphere of loving kindness out past these walls to all of San Diego, all of the city. May we all find true happiness within. May we be free from stress and pain. May we be free from anger and irritation. May we all be free from harm and causing harm. Expanding the sphere of loving kindness continually. And as this sphere of loving kindness expands, the world shrinks to meet it. So we can hold an image of the world in our hearts. Extending this wish for loving kindness, the sensation of loving kindness to all beings in all directions. May all beings find true happiness within. May all beings be freed from all stress and pain. May all beings be freed from anger and irritation. May all beings be free from harm and causing harm. And lastly, you can release the world from your heart and return to the breath. Noticing any tension that built up and consciously relaxing it. The forehead, the shoulders, the chest, the stomach. the arms, the legs. And taking a few more good, deep breaths slowly. And slowly opening the eyes when ready and stretching if needed. Never in a rush to leave the meditation. So as always, if anyone would like to share how that experience of loving kindness was for them, we always like to hear it. Whether it was easy or difficult.
I really appreciated the memory of going back to that child that I was wounded and being the support that I needed then in the present moment. I think that was very much.
We can be very critical of ourselves now, but when we were younger, it's a lot easier to kind of let that love flow. That childhood version of ourselves is just so much easier to extend this loving kindness to, because they haven't made all of the what we consider mistakes or blame or whatever that we have associated with ourselves. We don't have it associated with that child. And a lot of the mistakes or the unskillfulness that we have now is because we didn't have that as a child. So it can be really helpful to revisit that. Yeah.
I like the loving kindness. Actually, the Dharma Bombs is the first place that has different versions of it. So loving kindness, as I practice it in Northern California and other parts of the world, it's been it's been the same. I'm starting with self and eventually extending to all beings. But you and also the other teacher, you have a different version. It's the same. You end up at the path at the same place, but it's nice to experience different versions of loving kindness. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, there's many paths up the mountain, as the Buddha's saying. So there's many ways to approach any Buddhist practice. And something that's really important with meditation that I think, because a lot of methods will over time get cemented as the method, they miss out on an important aspect of meditation, which is ingenuity, a sense of creativity, a sense of play. Because not what works for one person might not work for another person. So we like to present a lot of different forms of practice here, loving kindness, a lot of different forms of loving kindness, a lot of different forms of breath meditation, because it's important to get in touch with what works best for us. And what works best for us is going to be different than anyone else. So it's helpful to get creative with the practice. And like you said, there's some general guidelines with loving kindness, and then you kind of make up the in-between. You start with that loving kindness for yourself or loving kindness for a benefactor. You start by generating loving kindness, typically for a singular person, whether it's ourselves or someone who's close to us. And then we eventually expand that out to all beings, because the Buddha calls these the sublime abidings, or the limitless abodes. And they're practices of the heart. Loving kindness is one of them, and there's a few others. And they're limitless because they don't have a distinction. They're not excluding anyone. They apply to all beings in all directions without limit or exception, because all beings benefit from all beings finding true happiness within, regardless of our opinion of any given person.
I feel like you hit the nail right on the head for what I was feeling too. I really enjoyed your lead, Travis, and a different style of meditation than any of the other ones I got. And I'm stoked on it. I really appreciate what you did today.
Thank you. I'm glad you found it useful.
Oh,
I tend to focus pretty much no matter what meditation I'm guiding or doing myself. I tend to focus on working with the breath first and kind of ironing out the tension of the day, because otherwise that tension kind of is on the back burner throughout the meditation. And usually by the end of the meditation, it kind of works itself out. But I found it within my own practice more beneficial to do some housekeeping before starting whatever the practice is. Tends to go smoother. I'll check some of the online comments. So Sherry shared, it's definitely more emotional to think of one's child self. I was thinking of my early childhood mostly, but when you said free from anger and irritation, my angry teen self popped into my head. That makes me think of another variation you could do with this practice of, instead of switching between people, you could switch between stages of life. The baby, the child itself, the angsty teen, the adult, and then the very moment. So thank you for sharing. Now, if anyone has any questions, I have one here, and then I'll open to any other questions. They shared, I believe it's Brian and Linda. They shared, I am not aware of or feel sensations from my heart. Any suggestions? Oh yes, Linda. So I'm not aware of or feel any sensations from my heart. Any suggestions? So that's something that will oftentimes come with practice. It's not necessarily, many people will feel sensations right off the go, and many people won't. So it's with practice, with repetition of the loving kindness, it becomes easier to get in touch with that sensation, or at the very least, that emotion. Something that can really help give rise to that sensation if it's just not occurring is to think of one of the happiest moments of your life. Ideally, not one that's also tied to one of the most bitter moments of your life. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but one of the happiest times in your life, to kind of give rise to that sensation, and then we can kind of rest in that sensation. Once we give rise to it, it tends to stick around if we're doing loving kindness practice. My other suggestion is to do forgiveness practice, which we almost did tonight, but I don't want to scare any new people away with forgiveness practice. It's not the most enjoyable practice. It's really beneficial, but it's not, You were almost out the door when I suggested.
I'm really packing this stuff up.
So it's not the most enjoyable, but it's really beneficial. And within a lot of schools of Buddhism that focus on loving kindness, it's suggested to do forgiveness practice first, as kind of how in the beginning we relax tension in the body, as kind of a palate cleanser, kind of a prep for loving kindness. Because if we're holding on to a lot of resentment, whether it's to someone else or self-resentment, either way, self-resentment especially, it becomes hard to get in touch with the physical charge of emotions. We've kind of numbed ourselves through that resentment. So forgiveness practice can be really beneficial to kind of directly treat and monitor that resentment, allow us to kind of let go of it a bit. I don't want to go that far, but yes, so on the YouTube channel, there's guided meditations. And within that playlist, one of them is forgiveness meditation. So feel free to make use of that if you'd like. Yeah. So anyone else have any questions or comments or anything like that?
I've had a lot of pain, tension in my body recently, and I couldn't really get past the first step you have, of trying to, even get the body set up for loving kindness meditation. And then the issue was that I was sort of bouncing between trying to do so many things in the meditation of like, oh, I have tension here, let me relax the tension. And then I noticed that tension somewhere else and said focus on that. And then you say something about it and then repeat a mantra and I'm like, oh wait, we're doing loving kindness. So if you've ever run into that, is there anything you prioritize, or is it just what you're already focused on?
So with chronic pain, which I have a lot of, with chronic pain, I found it helpful to one, keep in mind right effort, which I know you're familiar with, but right effort is this kind of balanced effort. It's part of the Eightfold Path, the core teachings of the Buddha. And right effort doesn't mean like going 110% all the time. The image that the Buddha gives with right effort, and many of you have probably heard it before, is the parable of the lute. The lute is a string instrument like a guitar. If you tune the lute too tightly and you try to play, the chords will snap. If you don't tune the lute tightly enough, no sound will come. And that's a direct analogy for right effort. It's a balanced effort, and it's an effort that's tuned to any given moment. So if we're dealing with chronic pain and the meditation doesn't necessarily get rid of the pain. It can dull the pain because like sometimes up to half of the pain is what we're dumping onto the physical pain. So it can reduce the pain by reducing our perception of the pain. But that only goes so far with chronic pain. So it's helpful to acknowledge and tune that level of effort to how much pain we're currently in. If we're breathing and trying to relax it and it's just not relaxing, then we've started using the meditation as a tool to generate stress instead of resolve stress, because we've created this internal struggle. So if the pain isn't dissolving, then I typically will switch topics. So in the example that you gave, I would have focused less on the tension throughout the body and would have focused more exclusively on just the area around the heart and worked on the phrases as kind of a distraction. Does that kind of address?
Yeah, I think that's what I was tending towards, and when I was tending towards it, I did feel it as right. Just opening that.
Sometimes we just overcomplicate things.
You think the saying, what we resist persists. What we resist persists.
Yes.
So is that kind of a Buddhist saying, or? I mean,
Um,
you hear that term a lot.
It's kind of a general spiritual term. I don't know if it's specifically coined by any Buddhist out there.
Okay.
But what we resist persists definitely applies to the practice. There's definitely that element within the practice, right? So there's certain approaches that we can take with when we're resisting something. And I always go back to the physical, because oftentimes the resistance is mental.
Mhm.
If we can check in and there isn't chronic tension, and we can acknowledge where the resistance is being physically held, and we can relax that resistance, then the mental resistance tends to lose its footing. But the mental resistance, any kind of unskillful mental state, in order to stay present in the mind, has no choice but to root itself as tension in the body. So any unskillful, unpleasant mental state that's continuing, or that's chronic, has footholds in the body. When we can relax those footholds in the body, again, it loses its footing, and it has a tendency to dissolve. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? So, yeah. So I'll talk a little bit about the other heart practices in Buddhism. I think Alex usually does touch on them, so I'll touch on them. Because I mentioned in addressing earlier, I mentioned there's other heart practices, so I'll touch on them a little bit, right? So you have these 4 Brahma Viharas, sublime abidings, limitless abodes, whatever you want to call them. The first one being metta, or loving kindness, goodwill, things like that. That's what we did tonight. And loving kindness, metta, is kind of the base Brahma Vihara. It's kind of what the other ones, it's kind of like the power source of the other ones, right? So metta is this wish for beings to find true happiness within. And it's not necessarily applied to a specific situation. It's just generating this wish and extending it to others. And then the next 2 Brahma Viharas are applications of metta, or loving kindness. The first one is Karuna. You'll hear it translated as compassion. And compassion is what loving kindness becomes when it encounters suffering. So we cultivate this loving kindness, and then almost in a reactive response to encountering suffering, loving kindness transforms into compassion. Compassion, of course, being the wish for beings to be free from suffering. When you see someone suffering, wanting them to be free from it. And if it is within our power to help alleviate that suffering, then doing it. So compassion is an action. Compassion drives us to take action, right? The second application is called Mudita, which means it's translated as empathetic joy. You could also kind of think of it as gratitude, gratitude, both gratitude for the things that happen to us, but also gratitude for the good fortunes of others, right? So mudita is what happens when goodwill, loving kindness, encounters bliss, sukha. Suffering is dukkha, bliss is sukha. It's what happens when loving kindness encounters people who are doing well, And it gives rise to this empathetic joy. You're happy because they're happy. And then the final of these, Brahmaviharas, is upekkha, translated as equanimity. The word upekkha literally means to be up on a mountaintop looking downward. So it represents taking a step back, seeing perspective on things. So equanimity is, if you have metta as the main Brahmavihara, and then compassion and empathetic joy as applications, then equanimity is the check and balance system of these, right? It's the wisdom aspect of these heart practices. Because compassion is a beautiful, wonderful thing. If left unchecked by wisdom, compassion can get us into some troubling situations. We give more than we have to give. We try to fix or affect problems that we don't actually have the power to fix or affect, and we exhaust ourselves. So equanimity is knowing when and where to apply these heart practices and when to take a step back. Same with empathetic joy. We can get so excited for the good fortunes of others, so wrapped up in how others are living the life that we neglect our own needs. We neglect our own life. So equanimity, upekkha, is this check and balance system. Each of these heart practices are intended as a specific antidote to things that typically, to unskillful mental states that are really distracting with the practice, really distracting from the practice, right? So you have metta, goodwill, is intended as an antidote to ill will. So ill will is wanting to deprive someone of happiness. When you see someone who you know has caused a lot of harm and they seem happy, like they're enjoying life, ill will arises. Goodwill is the balance to that, reminding ourselves that if that person found true happiness, they wouldn't be causing the harm that we dislike them for, whatever story we have in our head, right? Compassion is a direct antidote to harmfulness. Compassion being seeing someone suffering and wanting to alleviate the suffering. Harmfulness is seeing someone suffering and wanting to pile on top of it to make ourselves feel better about ourselves or whatever other nonsense we have up there. And then empathetic joy is a direct antidote to envy and jealousy. Instead of being upset that Steve got the promotion and we didn't, we're happy for Steve. So acknowledging that wanting to deprive someone else of their good fortunes doesn't increase our own good fortunes. And it's sometimes it can be hard to swallow, but that's kind of the way it is. And the only person who's harmed by our envy and jealousy is us, unless we act out on it. But for the most part, it's us. And then upekkha, equanimity, is, again, as I said, it's an antidote to overreaching either of the applications of loving kindness. And then I did mention forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't included traditionally within the Brahmaviharas, but it's considered a subset of loving kindness, or a prerequisite to loving kindness. Clears the stage. So yeah, with that, does anyone have any questions or comments about any of that?
And is forgiveness really required when you can just let go? Or is that the same concept?
That's the same, yeah. So forgiveness helps us let go of anything that we're really holding on to, any negative feelings that we have, any resentment that we have. And what's really interesting about forgiveness practice, the way it's applied, is we're not generating forgiveness for any specific situation. We're generating forgiveness as a mind state itself. And something really cool that happens in forgiveness practice is certain people will come to mind and we'll have no idea why they came to mind. Maybe we hold no hard feelings for them at all, as far as we're aware, but they still come to mind for us to extend forgiveness to. Or certain situations may come to mind that we didn't realize we were holding any resentment over, for us to extend forgiveness to. So forgiveness practice is really interesting because instead of like with loving kindness, where we go through a set of people or, as an example, forgiveness is generating it itself, really softening into the forgiveness and seeing what comes up, allowing what comes up to be present and extending the forgiveness to it. So it can be really revealing too. I've shared before that during forgiveness practice, I realized I had resentment for my grandfather for passing away, which is, he passed away when I was 10 years old, and child mind isn't necessarily that logical. So the child mind blamed him for leaving. But that wasn't something I ever realized. And my grief was tied directly to that resentment. And it was something I was never able to let go of the grief. Through the forgiveness practice, that resentment dissolved away, and then so did the grief. So forgiveness is really powerful. Highly recommend trying it. With that, we are at time. So if comfortable, we'll close with a dedication of merit. May any merit gained from tonight's meditation and discussion be dedicated to all those who suffer. May all beings in all directions, without limit or exception, be healthy, safe, joyful, and at ease. May we all be healthy, safe, joyful, and at ease. Metta Karuna Mudita Upeka Sahana Teya Chetasa Chaturisam Bharatva Viharati Samabudaro Pavena Samanamaro Pavena Samasangharo Pavena Sote Hamtu Nirantaram. So thanks so much everyone for coming. Again, my name's Travis. I normally lead tomorrow night, Thursday nights. Have a good rest of the week. I'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Travis.